Hi, welcome to the Ministry of Merkaba. Today we're going to do a reading from Paul Wallis and his book, Escape from Eden. Now, Paul was a former archdeacon of the Anglican Church in Australia, a preacher for more than 30 years, and he trained pastors in interpreting texts. He also runs the YouTube channel, The Fifth Kind. Much of the Bible, he says, didn't make sense until he looked up the core meaning of the words, and he found the word for God, Elohim, is plural, meaning powerful ones or sky beings, and that it means plural being more than one, and that Yahweh was the boss of the powerful ones. He also asked, does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by ETs? So we're going to read a few excerpts from his book. So the Purple View's account matches the Sumerian story, beginning with the development of male avatars or slaves for the superior beings. Only in a later stage is humanity modified to become a fully fledged, fertile male and female species, all its own. In the Purple View, this is the Mesopotamian tablets, and in Genesis, where humans ultimately become a species whose progress creates angst amongst superior beings. In the Popal View, the engineers convene an urgent conference to discuss the problem. As we listen in, we hear them closely paraphrase the anomalous verse from the book of Genesis. Now they have become like one of us. If that correlation weren't enough of a waving flag, the ancient elders of the Efik people of Nigeria would tell us that in the beginning their gods had the exact same conversation. The Efik tell the story of the first human couple formed by two powerful creative sky beings, Abasi and Ate. In the beginning, human beings were like children. Their understanding and intellect were simple and innocent, unable to even feed themselves. They need the sky being Abasi and his wife Ate to supply their every need. And at first, the human beings are content to be looked after this way. However, after a season, there comes a day when the humans tire of living in the home of the sky beings. They feel that they are ready to live on Earth. Abasi, however, has qualms about this next step. He sees the Earth as a place where the humans' knowledge and understanding will grow and mature. He fears that the human beings will become too developed and come to match his own level of wisdom. Anxiously, he confers with his wife. He tells her that he does not want humans to become like one of us. Ate ponders the matter and determines a compromise. The humans are to live on Earth by day, but must return each day to their home with the sky beings to eat and rest. At this stage, the first humans are forbidden to marry or have children or hunt or farm. This limit has been set in order to prevent the humans from producing a nation strong enough to challenge the power of the sky beings. But after a season, the woman tires of being treated like a child, so one day she simply refuses to return with the man to the home of Abasi and Ate. The next time the man sees the woman, he finds her working in the fields. She has learnt to farm and is growing her own food. The man is impressed with her wisdom and independence and quickly decides to join her and help her. The two soon fall in love and never return to the sky base again. After many years, the humans become great people, living on earth and working in the fields. One day, Bassi goes down to the earth and into the fields where he is horrified by what he finds. The humans have grown significantly, both in intelligence and in number. Abassi's fears have been proven. When he returns to the sky, Abassi shares his concerns with Attai. Attai now produces an emergency plan. In order to combat human development, she sends death and suffering into the world and causes the humans to be in perpetual conflict. The first man and woman die immediately, and their descendants, they have experienced conflict and suffering on earth ever since. All four creation accounts repeat the theme of creators pitching themselves against human progress. It is a strange motive, and it is hard to imagine in those in whose interest in such a story would have been created. It would appear to glorify no one in the story. In the main story of Purple View, the engineers share the same anxiety about human progress and intervene decisively to limit the humans' capacity to cause their masters too much trouble. The engineers achieve this with a downgrade of the human's vision and understanding. The engineers' third experiment in engineering people result in human beings who were capable of seeing beyond the limits of earthly physical reality. To make humans more manageable, the engineers take this higher faculty and switch it off. It is the final tweaking of the human condition, as described by the Popal Vuh. If they are capable of this, they say, nothing will be impossible. Curiously, it is only after I read about the switching off of our higher faculties by the engineers in the Mayan stories that the profound cruelty of the Babel event in Genesis really struck me. When we read biblical narratives as God stories, we are programmed to ignore or excuse quite monstrous actions. All around the world, we find cities and past civilizations abandoned and forgotten. We're left to wonder what caused their civilization to falter. How were they not able to continue? What was it? Disease, flood, fire, famine, climate change, or nuclear fallout? In the case of Babel in Mesopotamia, Genesis supplies an answer. The population is incapacitated by an assault from even more advanced, non-benevolent species. The cuneiform script was created as a method of just transcribing the diversity of languages now present in the world. All this from out of the ashes of the same plain of Shinar where human progress had been decimated in the world for long ago. Abraham and Sarah's journey, beginning in Samaria, plays out in the world as we know it, albeit the powerful ones are still present. The world before the time of our father and mother in faith requires us to unpick everything that we thought we knew about planet Earth, human beings, and God. We have a lot of remembering to do, and if we ever need an indication that the powerful ones, sky people, engineers of that world of long ago, were not merely literary projections of a God of love. We only need to put the incredible anti-human violence of Babel next to the violence of the flood and the violence of the fall, and we have more than enough of an indication. All were attacks aimed directly against the progress of human society. We need to rescue our understanding of the true God from being confused with the not nice stories of the powerful ones. The storylines themselves force us to listen to these mythologies differently and consider what fragments of understanding were being offered by the elders and the memory keepers of ancient times. So we would have seen a less violent Christianity, one less useful to imperial powers and feudalizing social orders. Indeed, the whole of Common Era history would have played out quite differently. So I have to ask, by anchoring Christianity to Jesus' recasting of the Elohim stories, did the church get it wrong, thereby distorting Jesus' revelation of God for the next 2,000 years? The cuneiform tablets and the other creation myths had set me back to the Bible to wrestle with the same wrestle. My questions around translation of Elohim had shone light on a whole number of God stories that may not be God stories after all. With my eyes open to that possibility, I could see why both Origen and Marcion might deserve a more careful re-listen. They were the two theologic, the, theologians who, in the earliest days of the church, spoke most boldly into these questions. Um, so Origen's tactic disregarded the plain meaning of the text wherever the content got a bit hairy. His advice to the preacher confronted with problem text, um, i.e., one in which the narrator asks us to believe monstrous things of God, was to preach on the moral of the story and find it in allegoric, allegorical or esoteric reading, reconfiguring Jesus or the church, all very well if it's just a sermon you're looking for, but it avoids actually the text and wrestling with the claims made by the text. By contrast, Marcion was open in promoting the same conclusion I had reached through my mythological travels, namely that not all God stories in the Bible are really God stories. So Marcion had grown up in Christian faith. He was a bishop and son of a bishop. From his studies, he concluded that the Elohim of creation narratives represent powerful entities or a powerful entity that is not God. His reasoning continued that if God is as he appears in Jesus, then he cannot possibly be as he appears in many of the Yahweh stories. Two characters are totally different to each other. Um, and they didn't. Right. So the church failed to address Marcia's central question of how we deal with the incompatibility of the character of Jesus over and against depictions of Yahweh and the Elohim in the Hebrew scriptures. The problem for Marcio was not simply that the claims about God were offensive in some general kind of way, it was that if God is as he appears in Jesus, then how can he possibly be as he appears in some of the old texts? So Origin is very clear that where God is portrayed as savage and unjust, the wise reader must utterly reject the plain reading of the bare letter of the text. So, so Origin is not really being honest. He's saying that you don't read the text and what it says is what it means. He's saying that, oh yeah, because it doesn't sound good, we make up another narrative based on something else. So that's interesting. So we know that the Bible has been fiddled with now, but and that the Bible isn't talking about a universal God. And so what Paul Wallis asks, and in his studies, he asked the question that was the colonization of every country of the world to eliminate local indigenous knowledge, so that the British Christianity was the only full spectrum knowledge, so nothing alternative would embolden independent movements and no history of first contact, that we are part of the cosmic family. So in our search for truth, we are finding that we haven't been told the truth and that we are still seeking. Now, this is quite a concern because there are many truth seekers out there, and in this time they've returned to the Bible. So I don't know how they're going to digest this. And I can very well understand people now that say there is no God because the God of the Bible doesn't talk about the God that we thought we knew. So our God is connected to our consciousness. And the archangels, and there are many people in this day with the sight that can help us. But these are strange times. So I have in my playlist much information that you're welcome to go through that I'm gathering to find the truth. So, and I'll be reading more books and we'll be going through them and surmising what we can out of them. So, very interesting. Paul was also saying that the pastors in the church, if they do question the Bible at all, that they are ridiculed or thrown out. So this is why we're not hearing this sort of thing until the pastors have actually retired or left the church, like Paul. And they speak quietly amongst themselves, but they are not generally speaking out publicly. So today I found Paul's book very interesting read, and it was very hard for me to digest at first, but I have. So the seeking the truth is more important. Thank you. I'll catch you next time.